Currently, it is 77 degrees here on the campus of Florissant Valley Community College. I'm Jell with your noon news update. 8 more police departments in St. Louis County will have body cameras by the end of the year. The police forces landed a $400,000 federal grant to equip about 260 officers with the recording devices. Bellefontaine neighbors, Brentwood, Bridgeton, Clayton, Moline Acres, Town and Country, Richmond Heights, and the University of Missouri-St. Louis Police are participating. Authorities are revealing the identities of 2 men shot and killed in St. Louis's Penrose neighborhood over the weekend. Police say Ira Johnson and Sylvester Caston were gunned down Saturday night near Sagshauser and Carter Avenue. Both were pronounced dead at the scene. Investigators have a known suspect. A person of interest is in custody after a Belleville barber shop was robbed over the weekend. Police say the robbery happened Saturday night at the Hayes Top Style clothing/barber shop on West Main Street. A man armed with a gun stole personal property from a customer, an employee, and the shop's owner before running off. The incident is under investigation. And now, on to the weather. Today, it is partly cloudy, high of 84, low of 65, with a 53% humidity but 0% chance of precipitation. Wednesday, it will be sunny with a high of 87, low of 66, and only a 10% chance of precipitation. Really, for the rest of the week, very low chance of rain. Thursday, mostly sunny, high of 88, low of 66. Friday, sunny, high of 88, low of 68. And Saturday, partly cloudy, high of 89, low of 69. And that's our best chance for rain at 20% chance of precipitation. So, it is going to be dry, it is going to be hot, it is going to be summer. Enjoy or endure, your choice. Anyway, that about wraps up the news and weather here, but please stay tuned because we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, it will be time for GameBabble Live, your video game news and information show, which airs every Tuesday from noon to 3 p.m. We will come back with what the new video game releases for this week are, what games are going to be released next week, and what anime are in theaters. But until then, here is Down by Young Steve-O here on 89.5 FM KCFV The Wave. Diverse music for your diverse mind. Currently, it is 77 degrees here on KCFV. I'm Jell, and this has been your noon news update. That was Down by Young Steve-O here on 89.5 FM KCFV The Wave. Diverse music for your diverse mind. I'm your host, Jell, and welcome to GameBabble Live, your video game news and information show, which airs every Tuesday from noon to 3 p.m. We'd like to kick the show off with what the new game releases are for this week, what's coming out next week, and what anime are currently in theaters. So, let's take a quick look at the new game releases. First of all, on PlayStation 4... let me see something real quick Okay, fine, that looks good. First of all, on PlayStation 4 this week, we get Disco Dodgeball Remix, Everspace, Gorogoa, which you should not pay money for. That's like a free... Gorogoa's got a weird reputation. Some kind of bizarre puzzle game. If this is the game I'm thinking it is, it's some kind of bizarre puzzle game. It's like a free mobile game with microtransactions, but for some reason they're charging a decent sum of money on it on consoles? I don't know, but yeah, Gorogoa is on PS4 now. Also, H1Z1 Battle Royale. I hate running backwards. Okay. One Piece Grand Cruise, which is a VR One Piece game. It is probably just a very short experience, but is priced accordingly, and I can't wait to crack into it when I get back home. It says Pixel Ripped 1989 came out, but it didn't. That has been delayed a little bit. A game called Shio came out. Also, Space Hulk Deathwing Enhanced Edition. Also, Star Trek Bridge Crew The Next Generation. Yeah, that came out of nowhere. There is Star Trek The Next Generation DLC for Star Trek Bridge Crew, which can now be played outside of VR. You no longer need a PlayStation VR to play it, and you can play non-VR with VR people, and of course it's also cross-platform PC and PlayStation 4. It's on all the headsets. So if you ever want to be on the Enterprise D, now is the time. And yeah, I'm gonna have to crack back into that game and get on there. Moving on, Super Hyperactive Ninja, and then in 2 days, Bloodstained Curse of the Moon. For those of you who might not be following or have only been half following, Bloodstained, cripes, what was the name of the other Bloodstained? Bloodstained is basically the new Castlevania, because Koji Igarashi, who's been in charge of Castlevania since Symphony of the Night, pretty much left Konami, and then he did a Kickstarter to make his own Castlevania game. And while he was working on that, there was also Intercreates was making a retro-style 8-bit Castlevania game, Castlevania-inspired game, and that's Bloodstained Curse of the Moon. So the main game is not out yet, but the 8-bit styled prequel is, and considering the kind of work that Intercreates generally does, I might have to pick that up. Moving on, Defender's Quest Valley of the Forgotten DX Edition. And then on the 25th, so that's Friday, Dark Souls Remastered hits PS4. Also, Detroit Become Human, the newest game from David Cage. Dungeon Rushers and Pixel Junk Monsters 2. Moving on, Xbox One. Ancestors Legacy, Disco Dodgeball Remix, Goro Goa, I Hate Running Backwards, and State of Decay 2. On the 24th, Bloodstained Curse of the Moon also hits Xbox One. And on the 25th, Dark Souls Remastered, Dungeon Rushers, Ascension? Sudden Strike 4, European Battlefields Edition, and Super Hyperactive Ninja, all coming to Xbox One. On Nintendo Switch, we have Disco Dodgeball Remix, Mega Man Legacy Collection, Mega Man Legacy Collection plus Mega Man Legacy Collection 2, and Mega Man Legacy Collection 2. Also, Runner 3. On the 24th, Arcade Archives Neo Geo Top Players Golf will be coming out, along with Arcade Archives Icky. Baobab's Mausoleum Episode 1, Ovinifagos Don't Eat Flamingos. Bloodstained Curse of the Moon is also coming to Nintendo Switch. It's coming to literally everything. Discovery Escape Game Aloha, N++ Ultimate Edition, Punch Club, and Zenbound 2. And then on the 25th, Atomine, Dungeon Rushers, and Pixel Junk Monsters 2. On the 3DS, on the 24th, Bloodstained Curse of the Moon and Dylan's Dead Heat Breakers are coming out. Dylan's Dead Heat Breakers being the newest game in the Dylan's Rolling Western series. And PlayStation Vita today gets Stardew Valley, and on the 24th, Bloodstained Curse of the Moon, and on the 25th, Seven Scarlet. Okay, moving on. PlayStation 4, what you got for us next week? Well, next week on PlayStation 4, we've got Agony, Die for Valhalla, Harvest Moon Light of Hope Special Edition, Knights of Pen and Paper +1 Deluxier Edition, Moonlighter, Owlboy, Sega Genesis Classics, Spin Tires, Mud Runner, The Ridge, Street Fighter 30th Anniversary Collection, oh wow, it's that soon, and Yoku's Island Express. On the 31st, we have Milanoir, and on the 1st, we have Earth Atlantis. Xbox One next week is getting Agony, Die for Valhalla, Moonlighter, Sega Genesis Classics, Spin Tires, Mud Runner, The Ridge, Street Fighter 30th Anniversary Collection, and Yoku's Island Express. Also, Knights of the Pen and Paper +1 Deluxier Edition, and Zamb Redux, and Milanoir, and Earth Atlantis. Nintendo Switch, what do you have for us next week? Well, next week Nintendo Switch has Die for Valhalla, Fallen Legion, Rise to Glory, Harvest Moon Light of Hope Special Edition, Ikaruga, Knights of Pen and Paper +1 Deluxier Edition, Legend of K Anniversary Edition, because you can't get enough Legend of K. That was a kind of Zelda-ish game with like a Catboy that was released back on PS2, and no one cared about it, but they've been re-releasing it recently, and it's a good game, so it's nice. Anyway, Owlboy will also be hitting Nintendo Switch, along with RBI Baseball 18, Saturday Morning RPG Collector's Edition, Street Fighter 30th Anniversary Collection, and Yoku's Island Express. On the 31st, Figment, Lost Sea, Masked Forces, I wonder what that is, Milanoir, Quad Fighters K, Smoke and Sacrifice, and West of Loathing will all be coming to Nintendo Switch next week. And West of Loathing is something That's an indie game based on Kingdom of Loathing, but it's Western, so it's all about stick figures, and a friend of mine loves that game. 3DS is getting nothing next week, and Vita is getting nothing next week. So that brings us to the Anime in Theaters report. Tomorrow, Porco Rosso will be in theaters dubbed. So, if you're interested in seeing Porco Rosso, that's when. And then June 17th, 18th, and 20th is Pompoko. I have not seen any other anime in theaters right yet. So, Porco Rosso on the 23rd, and then June 17th, 18th, and 20th will be Pompoko. That should conclude our new game releases and what anime are in theaters. So now I will throw you back to the music for Circus Sideshow by Hollow Point Heroes here on 89.5 FM KCFV The Wave. Diverse music for your diverse mind, but stay tuned for more video game news and information when we get back. That was Circus Sideshow by Hollow Point Heroes here on 89.5 FM KCFV The Wave. Diverse music for your diverse mind. I'm your host, Jell, and welcome back to GameBabble Live, your video game news and information show, which airs every Tuesday from noon to 3 p.m. It is so good to be back. Last week was the longest, maybe not the longest week of my life, but it was a long week. It was a very long week. I had some out-of-state yard work to do, only to come back and then immediately leave for a fantastic anime convention. I had tons of fun at Anime Central, but it is good to be back, and with so much interesting news and wacky hijinks to announce, including the fact that that Overwatch is getting nerfed. All of it. Yes, Activision Blizzard has been going around making lots of licensing deals, and one of the things that has been announced is that they are going to make Nerf replicas of Overwatch weapons. Yay. So I'm sure every Overwatch cosplayer will be getting their hands on those, and then some. Ooh, so that is definitely very interesting. Moving on from that, though, this makes me very happy. Yakuza 3, 4, and 5 are all being remastered for PlayStation 4. Now, it needs to be mentioned that they will probably not be the same kind of overhauls that Yakuza 1 and 2 got with Kiwami. This is just 3, 4, and 5, not Kiwami 3, 4, and 5. It was Kiwami. And I was trying to remember if that was actually the name of the Yakuza 1 remake. And this makes sense, because technically Yakuza Kiwami was a PlayStation 3 game. In Japan, Yakuza 0 and Kiwami are both on PlayStation 3 and PlayStation 4. We just only got the PlayStation 4 ones here in America. Yakuza 6 is the only true PS4 Yakuza game, which is also why it's like a bit of a step backwards. Anyway, Yakuza 3, 4, and 5 were all PS3 games originally, so they don't really need much of a touch-up if they're even going to do that at all. They'll probably be sold at a lower price because less work has to go into them. But the good news is that we're getting these games, or at least Japan's getting these games, and I would assume they'd release them in America now that Yakuza has finally found success. Again, this makes me happy because I really don't like the fact that people kind of act like Yakuza 0 is the only Yakuza game that matters. Like, a lot of people are getting that impression. No, all the Yakuza games are great. Zero's just a phenomenal starting point because it's the prequel to the first one, so it's the first game chronologically, and it's new, and it's on PS4, and it's minty fresh. But yeah, Yakuza 3, 4, and 5 are all getting ported to PS4, and I'm super happy about that. Especially 5, because 5 might be my favorite in the series entirely because of the Haruka chapter, where it turns into a lengthy dancing game. It's very weird. But the problem with Yakuza 5 is that it did not get a boxed release in America. It was digital download only, and that really pissed me off. So hopefully we'll get a boxed release this time, maybe. The real question, though, is what they're going to do with Yakuza 3. Because when Yakuza 3 came out, the Yakuza series was not doing well in America, but it was one of the most incredible games on PlayStation 3 at the time. It pushed the graphics, it pushed the content. Yakuza 3 was amazing when it came out. And So Sony, made special exceptions just for Sega so they could release Yakuza 3, but since Yakuza 1 and 2 didn't sell well, Sega didn't want to put a lot of money into the translation of Yakuza 3. So when Yakuza 3 was released in America, they actually chopped out a huge chunk of content, most notably the whole Hostess Club management simulator thing. Yeah, they cut that out, and then they said, most people in America wouldn't really care about this anyway. You probably wouldn't get it. And that caused a lot of people to scream censorship. No, it wasn't censorship. It was a lazy translation, which is arguably worse. You tell me which one you prefer. Either way, it's cut content. But along with that, they cut 25, 30, 40 some odd missions. Pretty much any mission that had to do with the Hostess Club obviously had to be cut. But then they also cut any missions that, referenced previous games. So the big question is, will that content come back for the PlayStation 4 release? Losing somewhere between 20 and 40 missions isn't that big of a deal when you have 200 missions, but that's still a meaty enough chunk of cut content that it really makes you raise an eyebrow, and really, any cut content is reason to be angry, no matter how silly it is. I completely support anyone who gets angry when content gets cut from a game, no matter how minor. Just the way things go. Whew, so, yeah, that definitely makes me happy. I'm glad that more people will be able to play those. I will say, though, for Yakuza 4 and 5, really don't like the side characters. Oh, Akiyama. I don't like playing as Akiyama. I like him as a character. Akiyama's an okay character. But collecting everyone's debts is just really boring. I don't like playing as Akiyama at all. I think Yakuza 4 might be my least favorite game in the series. And I mean, you still have to play as Akiyama in Yakuza 5, but you have the Haruka chapter in the middle, and that just makes up for everything. Anyway, I need to kick y'all back to the music. Here is, you know what, I've never heard this song, and I'm curious about it. We are going to listen to Rick Akasek, You're My Hero by Rushmore Academy, here on 89.5 FM KCFV The Wave. Diverse music for your diverse mind. Thank you so much for listening, and stay tuned for more GameBabble. That was Pop Out by G Money Entertainment here on 89.5 FM KCFV The Wave. Diverse music for your diverse mind. I'm your host, Jell, and welcome back to GameBabble Live, your video game news and information show, which airs every Tuesday from noon to 3 p.m. Let's get back to announcements and news and things like that. First of all, called it! So, last week we were talking about a game called Blade Strangers, a 2D fighting game featuring, characters from a number of different, rather random games, like Code of Princess, Umihara Kawase, and Cave Story. Well, spontaneous sidekick Sully, who is mysteriously missing today, was mentioning how much he wanted Quote, the actual main character of Cave Story, to be in the game. Well, guess what? Quote was announced immediately after that show. And I said, you know what? I think the next two characters might be Isaac from Binding of Isaac and, probably Shovel Knight. Guess what? Isaac and Shovel Knight were announced. And now people care about the game. It's actually rather funny. See, Blade Strangers was announced like a year or two ago. It's been floating around since the Switch launch. Immediately after the Switch launch, they announced Blade Strangers was in development. And it was like, okay, cool. And we knew it was going to have Code of Princess, Cave Story, and Umihara Kawase in it. And I was like, okay, cool. And no one really cared. It was just a thing that was happening until they announced Isaac from Binding of Isaac. And I guess that kind of makes Nicholas right. I'm going to say I've looked a little bit into it, and I have mixed feelings about the company Nicholas. They are the company that has been releasing the Cave Story games, but they do not make them. They're made by some guy named Pixel in Japan, and it's important to remember that Cave Story was a free game. It was released completely free, and the guy who made it was Well, he was like, yeah, sure, it's a free game, do whatever you want with it. You want to take my game and port it to a new system? Go ahead. You want to do a translation of it? Go ahead. He was very laid back about it. And it was a very nice attitude. Then Nicholas comes along. They had just been founded by some ex-IGN guy over in California, and they're like, hey, can we do like an actual WiiWare release of this? Get this game actually published, make people pay money for it. And the guy's like, yeah, I guess. Unfortunately, due to contract BS, Pixel might have actually lost the rights to Cave Story because of Nicholas. Because now, technically, Nicholas owns the rights to Cave Story, and this very much annoyed people, because now they get to send out cease and desist letters to people doing YouTube videos or mods and things, which the original creator of the game was totally okay with. This very quickly soured people to Nicholas, especially because they have a track record of announcing ports and then never releasing them, or doing a horrible job on things. A lot of people are worried because it seems like Nicholas may have killed the game 90s Arcade Racer or 90s Arcade GP, a game that was looking really promising and fun and was supposed to come out on the Wii U and never did, even though it looked nearly finished. And now we're all just sort of sitting around and wondering where it is. I think they said something about a Switch release, but, it's kind of up in the air. And apparently Blade Strangers was originally just going to be a Code of Princess fighting game, which I would have been totally on board with. But then Nicholas got involved, and they were like, hey, how about you make it a crossover with all these other properties that we happen to have the rights to? And they're like, okay, sure. And sure enough, they're right, because people actually, if it was just a Code of Princess fighter, no one would have cared about it. But now that Isaac from Binding of Isaac is in there, people are suddenly interested in this Blade Strangers game. So they're right there. And then shortly after all this, they announced a new game called Crystal Crisis. Crystal Crisis is a puzzle fighter style game featuring a lot of the same characters that are in Blade Strangers and then some. So, I believe Quote and Curly are both in it from Cave Story. We got characters from Code of Princess. We've got, I think I saw some Umihara Kawase characters. And most intriguingly, they have Johnny Turbo in there, who I believe I've spoken about in the past. Johnny Turbo was a kinda sorta attempt at a mascot for the Turbo Duo system in America. He showed up in a number of comic book advertisements for the Turbo Duo, wherein he fought off the Faka goons that were trying to sell the Faka CD. And it was very silly and embarrassing, and it's become sort of a running joke on the internet. The interesting thing about Johnny Turbo, though, is that he's a real person. Jonathan Brandstetter, the civilian identity of Johnny Turbo, was a person who worked at TTI, and later, ironically enough, went to work with Sega and worked on Star Wars Arcade for the 32X. And there is video footage of this guy. He does exist. He is Johnny Turbo, but no one has been able to find him ever since the Johnny Turbo resurgence. I wonder what happened to him, and I want to know what he thinks of all of this. But all of this does make me very wary and curious and wondering about Nicholas as a publisher. Because they're putting all these different characters from assorted indie games in there, and I'm like, wait, did everyone okay this? Or did you actually go around stealing the rights to popular indie game characters and getting away with it because you're dealing with small teams of people versus, you as an actual company with contracts and lawyers? This particularly intrigues me because, again, the Code of Princess characters are in Blade Strangers. And this worries me because I was really looking forward to Code of Princess 2, something that was announced back when the PlayStation 4 first launched. They said that they wanted to do a sequel to Code of Princess on the PS4. That actually reminds me of something that I need to look up real quick, yeah. weird. On the plus side, though, if you've never played Code of Princess, which, by the way, Code of Princess is actually a pretty freaking phenomenal little game. It's available on Steam now. It was originally released on 3DS, and there is a even more enhanced Code of Princess EX that will be coming to Nintendo Switch on July 31st, and that will actually have proper local multiplayer, because, again, it was originally a 3DS game, so you couldn't really do local multiplayer on a single system. They're adding that to the Switch release. That makes me very happy. Code of Princess is basically Guardian Heroes, but with characters designed by Kinu Nishimura. Kinu Nishimura being the Capcom vs. SNK 2 artist, as well as the artist for things like I think it's the Zero Escape series, and nine doors, the one with the 3 nines that isn't the Galaxy Express. That game, yeah, she did the art for those. She's awesome, and Code of Princess was kind of her dream project, and they worked with someone who actually worked on the original Guardian Heroes. And it's a Guardian Heroes style game, and it's freaking awesome. And I'm concerned as to if Nicholas wound up stealing the rights to it, because that would certainly piss me off. And what makes this even more intriguing is that Code of Princess EX comes to the West July 31st, and comes to Japan August 2nd. Even though it's a Japanese game, it is coming out in America first. Although, now that I look at it, that's a 3-day difference. I'm sorry, I wasn't thinking about how time works. July and then August, so okay, fine. It's a 3-day difference between the two. Still a little strange, and perhaps mildly disconcerting. I would really like to know more about Nicholas from the people who have actually worked with them. I might be going out on a limb, but I might start sending out some emails, because, yeah, this company definitely has its detractors, and with very good reason, as there is actually some indication that a Cave Story 2 was in development, but because Pixel no longer owns the rights to Cave Story, he canceled the project. And pretty much doesn't talk about Cave Story ever again. So that's something worth looking into. It definitely has me worried and concerned and raising an eyebrow. Is there seriously some company in California that is just stealing indie game characters and using them for their own benefit? Or do they have legit deals with these people? Because once you're a company, you can really screw over the little guys. And I'm worried about that. Either way, and it puts me in a weird place, because I do want Blade Strangers. It's made by the people who made Blade Arcus from Shining, which I've played and is a good fighter. In fact, I think they might have put that on Steam. Let me double check that. Blade Arcus from Shining. Is that on Steam? Yes, it is on Steam. Weird. I say weird because it was originally a PS4 game, and I have the Japanese PS4 release. But, yeah, no, I guess it's in English on Steam. And, yeah. Studio Saizensen. Actually, wait, I need to actually check something here. Code of Princess graphics set. Okay, I think I might have just discovered something. Apparently, Studio Saizensen may be the original creators of Code of Princess. Saizensen. Even so, maybe it's a more legit deal than we think. But yeah, I'm very curious about who Studio Saizensen is. They were Agatsuma Entertainment, and they've been doing very intriguing. So it might be a far more legit deal than I think, since they are the original creators of Code of Princess, and they're also doing the fighting game, but they don't appear to be involved in Crystal Crisis, so who knows? It's all very, very up in the air. And speaking of things that are up in the air, whoo boy, Coleco Evolved Mini Arcades. So recently there was a Kickstarter for Coleco Evolved Mini Arcades. And their design is based on the old LED tabletop arcade games. If you've never seen them, back in like the 80s or possibly earlier, they had these like miniature arcade machines which used little lights to like play a game of Miss Pac-Man and stuff like that. And I had a few of these. And out of nowhere, they're like, oh, hey, we're bringing those back with the Coleco Evolved Mini Arcades that use the exact same shell, but we're doing a Macross game and a Rainbow Bright game, and they're going to, instead of being these little, like, LED light-up things, it's going to actually have a proper screen in it. And there are so many questions to be asked. Like, first of all, the first question is the Coleco name. Is this... I have a reason to believe that this isn't made by the actual Connecticut Leather Company. Yes, that's what Coleco stands for. But rather by the people who were doing the Coleco Chameleon. The Coleco Chameleon being an attempted retro game console with an Atari Jaguar shell made by a bunch of weird retro gamers. And it was a huge, huge flop. Because they tried to do it without the Coleco name. Basically, it seems like there is a group of people running around throwing money at things to buy the rights to various retro crap, for lack of a better term. Like, this group of people bought the rights to use the Atari Jaguar shell, and then when they couldn't sell it like that, as the retro VCS, they bought the rights to the Coleco name to call it the Coleco Chameleon. And I'm going to assume it's the same people who have now bought the rights to the original shells for making the mini arcades, so that way they can do this, and now they're buying rights, I assume, to do Robotech and Rainbow Bright games. But here's the thing that makes it even more intriguing, and baffling. Number one, the Robotech game is just the Robotech GBA game. While the Rainbow Bright game is this weird Legend of Zelda-looking thing that seems completely original, but very, very, very poorly suited for a mini arcade-style setup. It's not an arcade-style game at all. What's more, Robotech, Macross, whatever you want to call it, the legal rights to that thing is such a nightmare that they have prevented BattleTech games from being released, because Harmony Gold has devolved from one of the earliest anime distributors in America to basically a bunch of copyright trolls. And I'm wondering if Coleco Evolved is going to get hit by those copyright trolls. Do they know what they're doing? I have many questions about this. But you know what I don't have questions... Well, actually, no, I do still have questions about. But you know what I have a lot more faith in? Is the Neo Geo Classic mini arcade thing, which we will talk about after a short break. A short break featuring This Place by Free Parking here on 89.5 FM KCFV The Wave, diverse music for your diverse mind. Thank you so much for listening, and please stay tuned for more. That was Pink Lemonade by James Bay here on 89.5 FM KCFV The Wave, diverse music for your diverse mind. I'm your host, Dell, and welcome back to GameBabble Live, your video game news and information show, which airs every Tuesday from noon to 3 p.m. Sorry about that rather long delay, but now we are back, and it's time to talk about the Neo Geo Mini! Is that what they're calling it? I don't know. I guess it's called the Neo Geo Mini. Anyway, so, it is SNK's 40th anniversary in June, and they're doing a bunch of 40th anniversary things. You know, they've got... various Neo Geo game collections and things coming out everywhere. And one of the things they announced is a Neo Geo mini arcade machine. It is a little tiny arcade machine with like a 3.5-inch screen that will have 40 classic Neo Geo games on it. They have announced there's both a US and Japanese version, with the US one having a slightly sleeker design, but it's all like black and gray, whereas the Japanese one is red and white and yellow and blue and green. It's much more colorful. But I like both designs. I think the US one might actually feel a little bit better to hold. But yeah, it's a little mini arcade machine, and it will have an HDMI out so you can hook it up to your TV, and apparently it has controller ports so you can play it two-player, which is good because the Neo Geo is known for fighting games. And it looks amazing, and it looks like the controllers might actually be remakes of the Neo Geo CD controller, which is so good. I have a Neo Geo CD, and the controllers have the clicky thumbsticks that the Neo Geo Pocket has. So, that was like one of the best controllers ever made, is that Neo Geo Pocket's clicky thumbstick. Having said that, one of my Neo Geo CD controllers broke, so I do question the durability of the clicky thumbstick, but the clicky thumbstick feels so good. It's hard to describe without just using it. So if they're bringing those back and packing them with the system, that is going to be great. I know a lot of people are really concerned about price because they're looking at this 3.5-inch screen and they're saying that is a tiny, stupid little screen that is probably going to jack up the price. Why would they do this? Well, I can tell you why they'd do this, because making a friggin' Neo Geo emulator box takes absolutely no work. Making a little miniature arcade machine takes a little bit more work. It makes it far more appealing, and more than that, these LCD screens are not that expensive anymore. I say this because if you go to Target, Target sells an exclusive miniature Pocket Oregon Trail game that also has like about the same size LCD screen. You'll also find mini arcade machines of like Centipede out there that also use like nearly the exact same screen, I think. And these things, I can't say prices on the air, but let's just say they are very cheap. I know a lot of people are probably freaking out about the price because the original Neo Geo home hardware was ludicrously expensive. Of course it was ludicrously expensive. That's because back then, in 1991, the Neo Geo was one of the most mind-blowingly powerful game systems out there. The Neo Geo home system was identical to the arcade hardware. You were literally bringing the arcade home. That was why it was so expensive. It was a premium thing. It was not meant for a mass market. It was meant for a small, select group of people with more money than sense that wanted to have the arcade experience at home. Nowadays, you can get hardware that can run Neo Geo games perfectly, like, for a couple bucks. Nowadays, you can get screens cheap. Nowadays, a Neo Geo would not be expensive at all. I know a lot of people are also, of course, thinking of the prices of the NES Classic and Super NES Classic, and I assure you those things cost $0 to make, okay? Those things are cheap to produce. They cost so much because Nintendo values their games very highly. It's that Nintendo touch. It's the fact that, oh, look at this cool case design we did, and oh, we recreated the classic controllers and created a really nice interface, and it has all these games that we value very highly. And that's why it costs so much. The NES Classic and Super NES Classic only cost so much because Nintendo said these are going to cost X amount of dollars. So that's what's going on with those. Having said that, this we don't know a price, we don't know a release date. Supposedly these are coming in the summer, and I want one badly, and I hope they're cheap. I hope that they are affordable. Like, pretty much I'm willing to pay a little bit more than the price of a new full-price game for these, and I think that'll be about where they fall. If they wind up being cheaper than that, I'm going to be happy. Now, you're probably wondering, what games are on the Neo Geo Mini? Well, they did just announce the release of the list of 40 games, and here's what we got. Are you ready? First of all, King of Fighters. We are getting King of Fighters 95, 97, 98, 2000, and 2002. Art of Fighting 1, Fatal Fury Special. Real Bout Fatal Fury. Garou, Mark of the Wolves. Samurai Showdown 2, Samurai Showdown 4, Samurai Showdown 5 Special. The Last Blade 2. World Heroes Perfect. Kizuna Encounter. Metal Slug 1, 2, 3, 4, 5X. In short, Metal Slug, all of them. King of the Monsters and King of the Monsters 2. Shock Troopers and Shock Troopers Second Squad. Sengoku 3. Ninja Masters. Top Players Golf, Super Sidekicks, Blazing Star, Puzzled, Magician Lord, Robo Army, Crossed Swords, Mutation Nation, 3-Count Bout, Last Resort, Ghost Pilots, and Football Frenzy. There are a lot of winners on this list and some eyebrow raisers. First of all, in King of Fighters, 98 and 2002 are the big ones. Those are the ones everyone cares about because those are the dream matches. They have the huge roster of characters. They are generally considered the best, so those are very good. Garou, Mark of the Wolves, is considered to be the competitor to Street Fighter 3 Third Strike. Very good game, people love it. The Samurai Showdown choices, spot on. Samurai Showdown 2 is widely regarded as one of the best. Samurai Showdown 4 is one of the most well-known and popular, and Samurai Showdown 5 Special is another one often considered one of the best. The Last Blade 2, also considered one of the best. Kizuna Encounter, that is a very, very good tag team fighter. A lot of people really like it. All the Metal Slugs, all good. Both King of the Monsters, good call. The two are quite different. Both Shock Troopers, good call. Both are quite different. Sengoku 3, widely regarded to be the best beat-em-up on the Neo Geo, and Ninja Masters is also considered to be a good game. And Blazing Star is good as well. The questionable ones is they have Art of Fighting 1, but not 2? Kind of would have been better to include 2. And Real Bout Fatal Fury, but not Real Bout Fatal Fury 2? And then World Heroes Perfect, but not 2 Jet. And I think people actually consider World Heroes 2 Jet to be the better game. So that one's a little iffy there. Having Blazing Star, but not Pulse Star is a bit of a disappointment. And as many people will say, Top Players Golf instead of Neo Turf Masters. What is this? I wish they could put Crossed Swords 2 instead of Crossed Swords on there, but Crossed Swords 2 was actually a Neo Geo CD exclusive. People have managed to cobble together a non-CD version of Crossed Swords 2, but it's not really official, so I guess they couldn't do that, and that's a shame, because Crossed Swords is like, okay, and then Crossed Swords 2 is one of the best beat-em-ups ever made. It is phenomenal. Think a combination of Punch-Out and Golden Axe. It's a back-view, side-scrolling beat-em-up. It's strange, but it's really, really, really good. The lack of Twinkle Star Sprites I find weird. I mean, it would have been the Neo Geo release, which isn't as good as the Sega Saturn release, true, but SNK owns the rights to Twinkle Star Sprites, and I do think it's weird that they didn't put it in here, because Twinkle Star Sprites is good times for everyone involved. I guess except the second player. But I'm personally disappointed at the lack of Savage Rain. You know, we have Kizuna Encounter, but no Savage Rain, and Savage Rain is sorely underrated. That's the prequel to Kizuna Encounter. It plays completely differently. It is really weird, but really good. And, of course, I would have liked Waku Waku 7 on there, because Waku Waku 7 and Twinkle Star Sprites, that is the tag team of doom when it comes to Neo Geo games for me. But, yeah, it's owned by Sunsoft, and that's a good sign that Sunsoft is still kicking if SNK didn't just slap that game on there. So all this looks really good, and while I was thinking about this, I realized, wow, a lot of people don't know how special the Neo Geo was. A lot of people, they hear about the Neo Geo and they just know that it was some premium retro system of the distant past. And they don't know about the cherry red arcade cabinets. And actually, that's my biggest complaint with the Neo Geo Mini, is that it's styled more after the home system instead of the cherry red arcade cabinets. See, I think this is a fun story to tell, because the Neo Geo was one of the most brilliant things ever. See, what you might not know is that arcade machines, they run on like an arcade board, a JAMA board usually, which contains the actual game and the hardware to run it. And these boards tend to cost like $1,000, $2,000. Not joking. That was like the price of an arcade board back in the day. Arcade machines were not cheap. And SNK, they saw that Capcom was doing this thing called the CPS, the Capcom Play System, which was like a kind of half-interchangeable board thing. It's hard to describe, especially because it was so proprietary. But SNK, they got inspired, and they decided to do a far less proprietary one. They created the Neo Geo. The Neo Geo was an arcade board that had built into it some of the most powerful hardware of 1991. It was a two-dimensional powerhouse. And the games for the Neo Geo came on these big old cartridges that you plugged into the arcade board. So it was kind of like a video game console arcade machine hybrid, where the board itself acts like a video game console that you put cartridges into, and then, of course, they converted it into a literal console. But unlike Capcom, who was very protective of their CPS, Capcom Play System boards, SNK let other developers make Neo Geo games. They could make third-party Neo Geo cartridges that you plug into the Neo Geo. And this is the best part. So already we have all these other publishers taking advantage of SNK's super powerful hardware. And they didn't have to spend money to put in all the sprite scaling and rotation and the ability to have all these colors and all these big sprites, because that was already built into the Neo Geo board. So that meant that they could make their games and sell their games cheaper. So Neo Geo games were significantly cheaper than your average arcade game. But here was the best part. The Neo Geo arcade board had multiple cartridge slots. You could put multiple games into a Neo Geo, and then you hit this game select button to switch between them and choose which one you want to play. So one arcade machine could have like 3, 4, I think even 5. I forget what the maximum number of cartridge slots that they had on this were. But it had multiple cartridge slots, and you could put multiple games into a single arcade machine. This was overwhelmingly appealing. You had some of the best visuals of the early 90s in a single arcade machine which can play multiple arcade games on the cheap. Yes, it was successful. In Japan, where space is a premium, having one arcade machine that can play 4 different games, that means a lot. And even in America, see, I realize a lot of people nowadays weren't around back when arcade machines were a thing. I remember a point in time where arcade machines were everywhere. You go to a 7-Eleven, they'd have arcade machines. You go to a hotel, and they'd have a little game room tucked away somewhere. There were even, like, not just pizza places, but just random fast food restaurants would sometimes just have a random arcade machine there. And you know what arcade machine almost every single one of these kinds of places had? A Neo Geo. Because they're like, okay, I remember they had arcade machines at the entrance/exit to Walmarts, okay? You know, where, like, the red box is nowadays, they used to have arcade machines there. And it was usually a Neo Geo because, well, they're like, hey, we want to make money off of having a little arcade machine here. You know, people like to play arcade games. Let's put one here. But we don't have enough space. You can't put a real full-fledged arcade just in the middle of a Walmart. You can't really make that big of a game room in a hotel, or you'd be wasting space that could be spent on more hotel rooms or a bigger pool or something. So when you had these tiny little spots for arcade games, you put a Neo Geo there, because the Neo Geo can play multiple games. And so Neo Geos were friggin' everywhere in the 90s, because they just made the most sense. And more than that, because they were cheap, and because people eventually figured out how to bootleg cartridges, Neo Geos were really popular in, I almost want to say, okay, real question that I know no one can answer because I'm on the radio. Is there such a thing as a second world country? Where, because not third world, certainly not, but not exactly considered, I don't know. But, like, in places that are up and coming, like Mexico, Brazil, Korea, and China, the Neo Geo was very, very, very popular, partially because a lot of these countries were just bootlegging games, or because the games were cheap, or they could get, like, old discarded games from other countries and stuff like that. And that actually caused King of Fighters to be very, very popular outside of the U.S. Here in the U.S., we don't really care that much about King of Fighters. In Mexico, they love King of Fighters. Korea, they love King of Fighters. China, they love King of Fighters. King of Fighters is quite big in other parts of the world. It's pretty big in Japan, but it is, like, way bigger in Mexico, Korea, and China. Just weird effect of the Neo Geo and the nature of this system. And it has left such a mark in history. It is so much more than just a ridiculously overpriced home console. Which, like I said, the home console was never meant to compete with the Super Nintendo and Sega Genesis. The Neo Geo home cartridges were produced in very, very small numbers. The systems were produced in small numbers. It knew darn well that it was an overpriced premium system that literally, in the most literal way, gave you the arcade experience at home. So much so that when you're emulating Neo Geo games, you can flip a switch to change between the arcade and the home version. The arcade and home games are identical. They are the same ROM. And that was the magic of Neo Geo. It was very strange. The Neo Geo was unlike any other system out there. It may have been inspired by the CPS-1 and CPS-2, but it did its own thing. And in doing its own thing, the Neo Geo was a work of utter brilliance, courtesy of SNK, and its legacy lives on today. And it's worth mentioning that the Neo Geo was so powerful that it pretty much took us until the Dreamcast to fully, properly emulate its games on a home system. The PS1 and Saturn games, even with a RAM cartridge, were not able to do everything the Neo Geo could. I've got the Saturn port of Waku Waku 7. It's not very good. Anyway, we desperately need to take a break, so here's Can't Deny Me by Pearl Jam, and we'll be right back shortly after this break here on 89.5 FM KCFV The Wave. Diverse music for your diverse mind. Thank you. That was Not Giving Up on You by Emma Lee here on 89.5 FM KCFV The Wave. Diverse music for your diverse mind. I'm your host, Jell, and welcome back to GameBabble Live, your video game news and information show, which airs every Tuesday from noon to 3 p.m. So I talked about the Neo Geo a whole lot. I freaking love that stupid thing. It was such a huge part of arcades back in the 90s, and it lasted so long. I mean, okay, the first King of Fighters was King of Fighters 94, and they made a new King of Fighters every year until 2003. That was the last yearly King of Fighters. 2003, that series outlasted SNK. They went bankrupt, and parts of the company went to Korea and produced King of Fighters 2001 and 2002 in Korea, while waiting to reform as Playmore, which became SNK Playmore, until they managed to put themselves out of business again, then get bought by a Chinese company, which really, like I said, King of Fighters was very popular in China, and so the Chinese company that bought SNK was like, dude, we're buying King of Fighters. This is a thing that matters. And so they've gone all in on trying to get as much of the original SNK band back together, pumping money into it, bought back the full SNK name and everything, and they've reformed SNK again. Oh, SNK. They're a company. But yes, the Neo Geo it lasted a while. I keep forgetting when the last Neo Geo game... You know what? I should find that out. Samurai Showdown 5 Special, I think, was the last Neo Geo game. Further upgrade versions Final Edition was location tested but never released. Huh. Okay, so it was released in 2004. The 1991 to 2004 was how long the Neo Geo lasted. And those did get home cartridge releases, by the way. I should mention this. I don't know if 5 Special got a home cartridge release, but I have a home cartridge of King of Fighters 2002 for the AES. And I know there's a home cartridge of SNK vs. Capcom Chaos, which isn't a very good game, but oh egad, I want it just so I can have it. So yeah, the Neo Geo was a trooper of a system. Anyway, I should probably move on. As I mentioned earlier, Star Trek Bridge Crew gets Star Trek The Next Generation DLC today, which is something we were all hoping for, and I'm very surprised about, because one of the things with Star Trek Bridge Crew is that it has this cloud-based IBM Watson voice recognition thing, and they implemented it a little bit after launch, and they were going to close that down, which I thought was a sign that Star Trek Bridge Crew was done. But then they extended that until the end of 2018. Okay, that's cool. That's still when the Watson voice recognition goes down. And then just out of nowhere, oh, hey, here's Next Generation. And I'm like, do what? Star Trek, you're putting Star Trek The Next Generation in Bridge Crew? Out of nowhere? And it adds the ability to make a Data-like Android character, so you can play an Android. Obviously, you get to be on the Enterprise D. They've replaced engineering with operations, which is basically a more evolved version of engineering. It's pretty much the same. And they've added in more random missions that can be generated in the random mission generator, known as Ongoing Voyages, as well as a new patrol mode, which they've said is inspired by roguelikes, where you're trying to take down a Borg cube. So that is all sorts of good stuff. Seems like very nice DLC. I look forward to getting into that. But while we're talking VR, so you know how everyone is getting a Battle Royale mode? Like, everyone's hopping on that Battle Royale train. Well, Rec Room is too. Apparently, June 7th, Rec Room will be adding the Rec Royale mode, but the beta will be May 25th to 27th. Now, calling this a Battle Royale mode is a little bit iffy because it's only 16 players. It's not like a big 100-player thing. But it's the same basic concept. You're going to be able to run around a woods campsite type area. They're implementing this backpack system where you'll have an inventory and you grab items and you try to be the last person left standing. And I'm pretty excited to try it, especially because the important thing to remember is that this is Rec Room, which is a completely free-to-play game. This is a completely free-to-play mode, so why the heck not? Rec Room, if you're unfamiliar, could almost be considered the pack-in title for VR in general. It's on Oculus, it's on Vive, and it's on PlayStation VR. And the best part is it's cross-platform. All 3 of these VR headsets, they can all play with each other. It is all completely cross-compatible. And it's all completely free. We're still wondering how they're going to make money off of this. But, yeah, what Rec Room is basically you go into an online VR rec center. There's just a bunch of random people there hanging out and talking, and you can hang out and talk with them, and there's just a bunch of games you can play or hang out or make your own private room and do all sorts of crazy things. And now you can, like, save your private rooms and share them with people because, like, you can use these 3D modeling guns to make objects and draw pictures, and you can kind of make your own games just with the random tools they have there. So now you can save that and share that with people, you know, in case you make some really cool 3D models you want to share with the world. So, again, really, really cool, good stuff. Although, if you want a crazy VR 3D art program, Cool Painter VR has been released, and I've been hearing a lot of good things about that. I've not picked it up myself, but it does look like good times. Because I messed around with Tilt Brush on the Vive. So, a PSVR version of Tilt Brush certainly seems like it could be very, very good times. So, excited about that. Speaking of the cloud, though, let's How about we take a dump on Capcom again? They have announced RE7 Cloud version for the Switch, where you pay a fee for 180 days of playtime, because the game itself isn't actually on the Switch. You connect online to a server that plays the game and streams the video to your Switch. This sounds like a terrible idea, and I hope that it doesn't become popular. There's one other game on the Switch doing that, and that's Phantasy Star Online 2, and that one baffles me even more, but that one at least makes a little bit of sense, because Phantasy Star Online 2, it's an online game anyway, so needing an internet connection doesn't make that big of an impact, but the fact that you have to play Phantasy Star Online 2 through the cloud is weird, because PSO2 was made for the Vita. You can play it on the Vita. Why can't we just play the Vita game on our Switch? That baffles me. But doing Resident Evil 7, which is a single-player game, and saying, oh yeah, pay this much money for 180 days of the ability to play Resident Evil 7 on your Switch, yeah, screw that. I've never heard a worse idea. That is awful. But speaking of Sega there for a minute, Puma is apparently releasing Sonic and Eggman-themed shoes on June 8th. And they will be ludicrously expensive. And honestly, I'm disappointed in the Sonic shoes, because they're just blue. You know, it's not like they're actually making something modeled after Sonic's actual shoes, which would have been cool. No, they're just Sonic-themed. They're blue shoes that say Sonic the Hedgehog on the bottom. And thus, the Eggman shoes are way, way, way better. I don't think they're really based on Eggman's boots at all, but you can at least see the theming more with the black and yellow stripes and stuff. The Eggman shoes are way better than the Sonic shoes. I'm just saying that right now. Speaking of blueness, though, Blue Vegito and Fused Zamasu are the next DLC characters for Dragon Ball FighterZ, and they will be hitting May 31st. And if the leaks are correct, which they have proven to be so far, then you can expect Android 17, Cooler, Base Goku, and Base Vegeta to be the next 4 characters for Dragon Ball FighterZ, whether you like it or not. Yeah, fingers crossed that they'll do a second season of DLC that's better. I would like that a lot, yes. Actually, getting back to Capcom, though, apparently there is a smartphone fighting game called Power Rangers Legacy Wars, and now it's doing a crossover with Street Fighter for some reason. So there you go. Capcom's next crossover is Street Fighter versus Power Rangers. Okay. Yeah, I don't even know what to say about that. And while we're talking fighting games, hey, Yoshimitsu's coming to Soul Calibur 6. Also, Captain Toad Treasure Tracker is coming to 3DS and Switch. So, good times for all of that. Significantly less good times. Indivisible is delayed to the first half of 2019. Indivisible is the next game from Lab Zero, the makers of Skullgirls, and it is a very, very, very Valkyrie Profile-inspired action RPG, which a lot of people are very excited about. There's a demo version floating around out there, but they are finding that it is taking more time to complete this game than they had initially intended, or thought. So more than likely, the Hyperdimension Neptunia Valkyrie Profile knockoff will hit first. Meanwhile, Square Enix, owners of the Valkyrie Profile IP, have decided to re-release the original Valkyrie Profile on smartphones. You know, you could put it on PS4 and Steam, and people would love it, because Valkyrie Profile is one of my favorite RPGs of all time, and it's great, and people need to play it, and getting the original game tends to cost like $100 or more, so you know a re-release would be really good, Square Enix, but no, you're not going to do the smart thing because you're Square Enix. Glad we got that cleared up. Did I mention that Yoshimitsu's... Yeah, I mentioned that Yoshimitsu's announced for Soul Calibur 6. Good times. But speaking of Namco, this is something that intrigues me heavily. Go Vacation is coming to Switch. Bleh? Okay, story time. You knew it had to come eventually. Go Vacation was a Nintendo Wii game, and it is technically the third game in the Wii Ski series. They made Wii Ski, they made Wii Ski and Snowboard, and then they were like, we've run out of things to do with the snow, go vacation, let's go beyond the snow. The snow resort is pretty much just Wii Ski or Wii Ski and Snowboard, and then they added more resorts. The idea is that it is a 4-player, split-screen, free-roaming, open-world minigame collection from Namco. I'm not kidding, that's what it is, and it supported the Motion Plus and the balance board, but with Go Vacation, they actually advertised it a good bit, and they put a lot of effort into it. It's actually made by the Ridge Racer team, and it has, like, music from Ridge Racer and Katamari Damacy. Shoot, if you go to the city, the city resort, there's a racetrack you can go to, and you click that, and it starts the racing minigame, and it's just Ridge Racer. It plays a tropical remix of the Ridge Racer theme. It has the PSP Ridge Racer boost system, and it's the original Ridge Racer course. They just have a little mini-game version of Ridge Racer just sitting there in this random mini-game collection. And that was kind of what made Go Vacation so cool. It was the Wiiest Wii game that ever Wii'd. It was, because it's this big 50-game minigame collection that they put way more time and effort into than they ever needed to, but the minigames were actually pretty darn good, and it was fun to mess around with. And on top of all of that, it did have a weird, like, build and furnish your own house system as well, because it just needed to be even more Wii-tacular. And yeah, I've heard a lot of people made me feel old by declaring that the game was a huge part of their childhood. And I'm like, you know what? I could see that. Because real effort went into Go Vacation. It is, like, if you wanted a third-party minigame collection for the Wii, I would recommend Go Vacation over anything else. But now it's coming to Switch. Buh? And I was like, wait, so is it just a quick port? No, they're enhancing the graphics. The character models look way better. So it looks like it's an enhanced port, but it's still going to have, like, I will say the world geometry doesn't look that good. It looks like it's the same world geometry, but it looks like they've redone the character models, maybe redone a lot of the textures. But now I'm wondering, will all the minigames make the transition? How much is going to be lost by the lack of a balance board? Because the fact that that game supported the balance board so heavily was kind of a big deal. Like, the original Wii Ski was why I bought a balance board. Because it was like the coolest game on balance board, because the way it worked was, the balance board was your skis, and the Wiimote and Nunchuck were your ski poles, and you stood on the balance board, you shoved the ski poles, and you go crouch, and you shift your weight, and it worked really well. It was a well-thought-out thing. So, removing the balance board, I don't think the balance board is compatible with the Switch, as far as I know, so, I do think you might lose something there. Is it going to be good for the pointer-based games? Because while the Joy-Cons have way better tilt sensing than the Wiimote ever had, they don't have pointers. So it raises so many questions, and, like, are they really going to stick that hard to using motion control? Because if they do, that's going to hamper the 4-player aspect, because a good chunk of these games required a Wiimote and Nunchuck, so I was assuming you'd use both Joy-Cons. So could you actually get 4 players running on it if all 4 players had to have 8 Joy-Cons? Can you connect 8 Joy-Cons to a Switch? There are many, many, many questions I have to ask. Are any minigames being replaced? Are there any new minigames? Are there any new features? We don't know. We just know Go Vacation is coming to Switch, and that was the last thing I expected, but I'm actually kind of intrigued by it and excited, and I want to see how it turns out, because that was a weirdly enjoyable little minigame collection. Anyway, so now it is time to take a break. So let's listen to Remind Me to Forget by Kygo featuring Miguel here on 89.5 FM KCFV The Wave. Diverse music for your diverse mind. And please stay tuned for more GameBabble Live as we come into the to the final hour of the program. oh, I'm sure I will cook up something because there is so much just random news to report. Until then, though, here is Remind Me to Forget by Kygo featuring Miguel here on 89.5 FM KCFV The Wave, diverse music for your diverse mind. Thank you. That was Polygraph Eyes by Youngblood here on 89.5 FM KCFV The Wave, diverse music for your diverse mind. I'm your host, Jell, and welcome back to GameBabble Live, your video game news and information show, which airs every Tuesday from noon to 3 p.m. Once again, I am your host, Jell, and it is time for more video game news. First of all, I am very happy to say that a PlayStation VR-compatible demo for Zone of the Enders, The Second Runner Mars, launches tomorrow. For anyone not following, Zone of the Enders, Second Runner Mars is a PlayStation 4 port of Zone of the Enders, featuring support for 4K visuals if you're playing outside of VR. It does not require VR. Or you can play the whole game in VR. And I've been really excited to see how Zone of the Enders, Second Runner works in VR. And it's, it keeps getting delayed and pushed back, and it's coming soon enough, blah, blah, blah. We get a demo. And I am so excited to try this demo out, especially because I hear they put in a new control option. Apparently there is some kind of pro control mode that gives you even more control over your mech, but they don't recommend starting with it. They still have the regular control scheme, which is good, because there's a chance the pro controls will be too complex. Or maybe the pro controls will wind up being perfect for a more immersive VR experience. We will find out when I play it tomorrow, because I am ridiculously excited about this. Let's see, what else do we have? Let's see. I should announce that GameBabble is coming to America in fall 2018, as well as Europe, and that makes me happy because I was fretting over how I was going to buy that game. GameBabble being a heavy metal drumming game with an all-schoolgirl cast fighting off aliens. Point is, Tak Fuji is involved. Tak Extreme Fuji. And that alone makes me intrigued, because I'm sure this will not be an ordinary heavy metal drumming game. It will be an extreme heavy metal drumming game, because that's how we do. Also, someone was interviewing the Koei Tecmo president about what the next Warriors games he wants to do is, and he said that he really wants to do Star Wars Warriors and Super Mario Warriors. I don't know how you do Super Mario Warriors, but I'm intrigued, but Star Wars Warriors might be plausible. See, word on the street is that Koei Tecmo is going to announce their next Warriors game, their next Dynasty Warriors game, is going to be based off of a Western property. So it could be Star Wars, or the fact that this guy said that he wishes he could do Star Wars means it could be something else. Could it be Transformers Warriors? G.I. Joe Warriors? I don't know, but I'm intrigued. I'm always intrigued by the Warriors games. I like those games. I mean, 9 was a disaster. On that note, did I mention Warriors Orochi 4? Because this is one of the things that makes me super happy, is Warriors Orochi 4. They have officially announced that, disappointingly, it won't really have any guest characters. It will just be Dynasty Warriors and Samurai Warriors. But they have said it will not be open world, and it will have 2-player split-screen co-op. And it will also be on Switch. So, they are walking back Dynasty Warriors 9 hard. Very hard. And I'm happy about this, because you see, Koei Tecmo, they learns their lessons. They'll make mistakes, and they will walk it back as fast as they possibly can. I knew there was a reason why I buy way too many of their games. But in stranger news, let's talk Sony. First of all, Sony is ending physical PlayStation Vita games in the US and Europe. Now, that is a thing I really want to emphasize, because a friend of mine was telling me about this over the weekend, and he said they were just ending it in general, and I said that's very peculiar, because the Vita is very popular in Japan, continues to be popular in Japan, and has actually been more popular than the PlayStation 4 in Japan. Meanwhile, in America and Europe, the PlayStation Vita is considered long gone and done and has been for years, even though new Vita games keep coming out, because people keep translating Japanese Vita games. The Vita is such a weird system, because once again, we have this system that is super, super successful in Japan, and a complete and utter flop in America. But yeah, he said they were just ending it in general. There were going to be no more physical Vita games after March 2019. This is false. It's just US and Europe that they are no longer going to make physical Vita cartridges for. They can still make Vita games, but they'll have to be downloads. We won't get any more physical releases after March 2019. So that's very peculiar. But more peculiar and disappointing is that the Sony Interactive Entertainment president and CEO, John Tsuyoshi Kodera, says, and I quote, "The PlayStation 4 is finally entering the final phase of its console life cycle." I am not happy about this, because this is too soon. I have a friend who actually just bought a PlayStation 4. The PlayStation 4 Pro just came out, and they're already saying pretty much PlayStation 5 is coming. We knew a PlayStation 5 would be made eventually. However, the word on the street had been that the dev kits are out, the PS5 hardware is done, and that they would likely be announcing it at E3. Sony has come out and said, no, we're not. PlayStation 4 still has a ways to go. We're not announcing the PlayStation 5. But now that this guy said, PlayStation 4 is entering final phase of its life cycle, we can pretty much guarantee the PS5 is going to be shown at E3, and that is disconcerting to me. Why? Well, because the PlayStation 5, I think, does need to focus. I think the PlayStation 5 is going to focus more on VR. Virtual reality has proven to be quite a thing for Sony. I wouldn't, they've said that the growth is not as strong as they'd expect, but that it is continuing to sell well, and that they just need to scale back their expectations. But I believe a VR headset would really be beneficial for the PlayStation 5, but I would say you make the PSVR 2. You make a new one with new technology that's drastically improved as the technology has grown. Really link the two things together, and I feel that we haven't reached that plateau yet. We haven't quite reached Gen 2 of VR, and I think the PlayStation 5 needs to wait until virtual reality Generation 2. And I don't see them doing this. So I am concerned that the PlayStation 5 will be announced at E3 and will be coming too soon. And I know the PC gamers are probably going, well, the PS4 is holding us back, and technology has improved, and screw the PS4, you need a better console anyway, and I don't think we do. I don't think the PlayStation 4 is really being fully utilized yet, and it's going to get even weirder now that the Switch is here. Now that the Switch is a monster, now that the Switch is doing incredible, and is basically telling everyone, hey, hold your horses, scale your games back, the Switch is where it's at. And really, I think that's a good thing. I think, because one of the things you have to remember is that as technology gets better and better and better, sometimes game development gets sloppier and sloppier. Because now that back when you were under super tight constraints, you had to really pay attention and optimize your game so that way it would run on these less powerful systems. Now, as technology gets better, people can kind of just let it all hang out. Oh, whoops, this model has way, way, way too many polygons that you can barely even see. We don't really need to optimize that. Oh, we have ridiculously oversized textures. We don't need to worry about that. We don't need to worry about all the memory we're wasting. And I think that this has been going on for a while now, and it has resulted in some sloppy game development. And I think people need to do better with what they have, rather than going, time for a PlayStation 5 so we can be even sloppier. We need to draw the line somewhere, and with the PlayStation 5, there needs to be even less tolerance for 30 FPS. We shouldn't have had 30 FPS on PS4. With VR requiring minimum 60 FPS being magically transmuted into 120 FPS, with VR requiring 60 FPS split screen, minimum. It's time to stop it with this 30 FPS BS. And I know a lot of people are going to say, well, I can't really tell the difference between 30 and 60 FPS. And you know what? A lot of times I can't either. But 60 FPS does matter. It does mean games run smoother and control better, because this is the best way to explain it. Even if you can't really see the 60 FPS, the soonest a button press can be reacted upon by a system is on the next frame of animation. So the more frames of animation you have, the sooner a game can respond to your inputs, and thus the more responsive your controls can be. So games running at 60 FPS can have twice as responsive controls as games that run at 30 FPS. That is the best way to describe it. That is the way it works. And I really hope that this next console generation we do that. Because one of the other things that was recently pointed out to me, I was watching some YouTube videos, and the PlayStation 2, GameCube, and Xbox made a very serious and concerted jump to 60 FPS. A lot of PS2, GameCube, and Xbox games ran at 60 FPS. But then when we went to PS3 360, a lot of them dropped to 30 and below. And because we were so concerned about pushing these graphical barriers, and we need to stop it. We do need to stop it. People are getting fed up. Please go back to PS2, Xbox, GameCube quality games. But even still, I'm really hoping that Sony's push for VR, even if they're a little waffly on it, will help with this, because you need 60 for VR. Oh, yeah. So I really hope that takes off. And it does make me wonder what in the heck Microsoft is going to do. And again, it hasn't been that long since the PS4 Pro came out. And a lot of people were looking at their PS4 Pros as PS5s, so even though they wound up being barely an upgrade at all. So now that Sony's going to release an actual PS5, I think a lot of PS4 Pro owners are going to feel very ripped off. It's going to be interesting to see how this plays out. And Sony is going to have a hard time pulling this off without pissing people off. I think the PS5 absolutely 100% must have complete backwards compatibility with the PS4. This is required. Period. Because PS4 games take way too long to develop. There are way too many in development. And if Sony just said, oh, whoops, make all your PS4 games into PS5 games now, bye, it would piss off a lot of developers and a lot of consumers. It would be a definite blow to console gaming as a whole. And at that point, you should just forfeit to Nintendo. Switch wins, you're done. So, hopefully, Sony will know what they're doing when they announce the PlayStation 5. However, we're talking about Sony, the master of dropping balls. So they won't, and it'll be a disaster. So, stay tuned for E3, where Nintendo will dominate with their underpowered Switch, and Sony will make a complete fool of themselves with the PlayStation 5 announcement that darn near kills console gaming if it weren't for how awesome the Switch is. I'm calling it now. Considering I was right about those Blade Strangers characters, I might be on a roll. No, I'm completely serious. I expect Sony to screw this up really, really badly if they're doing a PS5 right now. And this is one of those things where people get into arguments where they're like, well, the PlayStation 4 has already been out for more than 5 years. And yes, in the past, a console generation was 5 years. PS3 360 lasted 10, though. And there was a reason for that. It's because the games took too darn long to make. And there weren't enough significant hardware improvements in that time. To the point where when the PS4 and Xbox One first came out, they still didn't feel like enough of an upgrade from the 360 and PS3. So if they make a PS5 and they don't do it right, it's going to feel like even less of an upgrade. And as it is, like I said, games take way too long to develop. A lot of people don't feel the PlayStation 4 has enough games, even though it is the dominant console on the market, and it has a good roster of games. A hefty chunk of them are ports of older games. A hefty chunk of them are PlayStation 3, Vita, PS4 simultaneous releases, because that's how Japan did it. Because the PS4 flopped in Japan initially and is only now gaining steam, because the launch was way too US-centric. And as such, most Japanese games were released on PlayStation 3 and Vita, as well as PlayStation 4. PlayStation 4 was the best version, but you could still play them on PS3 and Vita. A lot of Japanese companies did this. If they don't have PS4 compatibility with the PS5, I don't know what they're thinking. But I expect Sony to screw this up. I expect the PS5 to fail. I expect Microsoft to give up on consoles in general. I think they're going to stay the course with the Xbox One X and just let Sony make fools of themselves. And I think Nintendo will dominate. Because the Switch, due to its portability, even though it has so many design flaws, like when you really think about it, the Switch has a pile of really, really bad design choices and ludicrously overpriced peripherals. But the Switch works. The Switch, the whole portable console hybrid thing is enough of a hook that people are willing to look past numerous flaws with the Switch. Cripes, have you tried using the Switch's online store? As usual, Nintendo can't do a good online store. It's garbage. But no one cares because the Switch is such a good idea that they don't care. The Switch is cool. And it's going to be interesting to see. I think this E3 is going to be quite the circus. Because E3 is always, let's just be blunt here, E3 is a circus. It's always a circus. And it's going to be funny watching what happens. I expect Microsoft to sort of fade into the background, which is actually going to be really weird because they usually have such a stage presence. But yeah, no, they've got to fade into the background this year. I don't see how they can do anything that would really excite people. Unless they have something amazing up their sleeve, which I doubt. But I guess they could do like maybe Microsoft will finally relent and say, okay, maybe VR is the future and they build a full VR-centric console? That would be weird and unexpected since Microsoft has been actually kind of anti-VR for a while. So that could be one. Sony, though, I expect them to announce the PlayStation 5 way too early and make fools of themselves. And we already know that there is going to be a ton of Switch games announced at E3. This is 100% confirmed, because, yeah, people who work at GameStop, they're like, we have a lot of unlabeled SKUs for Switch games that just popped up in our system. Unlabeled because, you can't find out what games they are yet. They'll get names later, but we have their barcodes. They're set aside. So that's going to be a hoot. I fully expect a Nintendo-flavored massacre. But in Microsoft's defense, they are doing one thing really, really cool. I gotta applaud them for this. They did it good. Microsoft is making something called the Xbox Adaptive Controller, which is made for people with limited mobility. And it supports a number of add-ons, like you can plug in a one-handed joystick from PDP and stuff like that into it. Like, I think some people just make giant buttons you can put on a table. And so it's this specialized... I don't really understand how the Xbox Adaptive Controller works. It's very strange looking, but supposedly the idea is it's this giant customizable controller for people who have mobility issues, who can't hold controllers for very long or can't reach the shoulder buttons or any number of other disabilities, and by plugging in these other add-ons, it can be customized into the controller you need for your situation. It is going to be a bit on the pricey side, but I applaud Microsoft for doing this, for making a controller for a small market of people who really need a specialized controller. So, good job, Microsoft. I like this. I like what you're doing, especially because you can use it on your PC as well. And that'll probably be, because you can use Xbox One controllers on your PC. I assume you could use this on your PC. And that is going to help out a lot of disabled gamers. I've seen some incredible friggin' people who play high-level fighting games with. One year, I saw a guy who was a quadriplegic, and he played Street Fighter IV by wedging the joystick into, like, the stumps of his arm, and he did good. He did darn good. And then there is the legend that is Broly Legs. And, yeah, I've seen some very amazing, determined, disabled people, people with mobility issues, find solutions. But I am glad that there is going to be a more official solution, and I look forward to seeing if these players will utilize this. I kind of want to see what Broly Legs does with the Xbox Adaptive Controller. Could be interesting. But yeah. Let's see, what else is there? I guess there's one more thing I can announce before I'm really scrambling for things to talk about. And that is that rumor, emphasis on rumor, has it that the next game from Retro Studios, the makers of Metroid Prime and Donkey Kong Country Returns and Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze, is going to be Star Fox Grand Prix, a Star Fox-themed racing game described as a combination of F-Zero and Diddy Kong Racing. Essentially, it is going to be... And I've heard a lot of people talk about this, a lot of people convinced it's going to be a real thing, and it's making people go, oh, why don't you make a real F-Zero game? And it's like, because this is going to be Star Fox, and so people are like, oh, well, it'll be like G-Zero, which is the alternate universe F-Zero from the Star Fox universe, because blah, blah, blah. No, hold on. The reason they say combination of that, of F-Zero and Diddy Kong Racing is because it sounds like it's going to be a flight-based racing game, which has me very intrigued because I'm wondering if they're going to implement any sort of shooting in it. Because that could actually be interesting if they found out a way to do a hybrid racing game rail shooter. That could be cool. But just like an aerial racing game, I'm going to be honest, I haven't really played a good aerial racing game. All the ones I've tried have been kind of Diddy Kong Racing, Freaky Flyers, just not that great if you ask me, but maybe Star Fox Grand Prix will surprise me, or maybe Star Fox Grand Prix is completely made up, as the person who quote-unquote posted this leak has a history of making things up, and so it's probably all false. But we shall see when it gets here, because, Nintendo's going to show some stuff. I mean, as it is that we've already confirmed that they will be showing Smash Brothers, and that so many people are interested that they're giving out tickets to play Smash Brothers instead of just having a giant line, because there's going to be way too many people who want to get their hands on that Smash Brothers, because it's Smash. So this is going to be a very interesting E3. Anyway, it is time to take a break, so here is Could Have Been Me by The Struts, here on 89.5 FM KCFV The Wave. Diverse music for your diverse mind. Thank you so much for listening, and stay tuned for more. That was So Tied Up by Cold War Kids, featuring Bishop Briggs, here on 89.5 FM KCFV The Wave. Diverse music for your diverse mind. I'm your host, Jell, and I was just checking the Buy King website to double-check and make sure they're the ones making My Hero Academia 1's Justice. That, of course, being the fighting game based on the anime series My Hero Academia, which I'm very excited to play. It'll be coming to PS4, Switch, and probably Xbox One and Steam as well. I think I heard that. Anyway, a lot of people were super excited about it because, yay, My Hero Academia fighting game, and then they see it in action and they go, oh no, it's basically Naruto Ultimate Ninja Storm. And that's been the rumor that's been going around. Everyone's been really disappointed because, it's just Naruto Ultimate Ninja Storm, but with a My Hero Academia skin. That's what everyone thinks. However, I disagree with this because Naruto Ultimate Ninja Storm is made by CyberConnect 2. Whereas My Hero Academia One's Justice is made by Viking. And Viking, they do much better games. They were originally a part of Capcom, making the Gundam Versus series as well as the game Gotcha Force. And then they split off, became their own company, continued making the Gundam Versus series for Namco Bandai, while also doing games like Magician's Dead for Square Enix, and their big breakout hit, Gunslinger Stratos, which I finally got to play at that anime convention. And all of these games actually have very, very similar gameplay. They are the ones who pretty much popularized the arena fighter genre. And all of these games, like, it's funny, there's just so many elements that are similar. The most notable being, well, the way winning works. Like, when you defeat an opponent in any Viking game, going all the way back to Gundam Versus and Gotcha Force, it does a slow-motion zoom in on the enemy falling down and losing, then it pauses, camera spins around, and it zooms in on who landed the finishing blow. It has looked identical since the GameCube. When I was playing Gunslinger Stratos this weekend, I could practically hear the Gotcha Force victory fanfare in my head. It was identical. And so I've been trying to find footage of a full match of My Hero Academia to see if it will do the same thing. There is a very good chance, this being an arena fighter from Viking, and every arena fighter from Viking having very, very similar gameplay, that this too will play like Gotcha Force and Gunslinger Stratos and Gundam Versus. However, all of those games involved characters that could inexplicably fly. My Hero Academia does not have characters that can inexplicably fly. Not all of them, that's for darn sure, though they can certainly get some height. I am seeing a lot more, and also all those games have a lot more projectiles. With My Hero Academia, I am seeing more ground combat. I am seeing running on walls. I'm seeing things that would indeed make you think it's a reskin of Naruto Ultimate Ninja Storm. But I know Viking hasn't made a game quite like Naruto Ultimate Ninja Storm, but at the same time, they've never done one so melee-centric. So I'm curious if this is going to be the biggest change-up in the history of Viking arena fighters, or if it's just going to be a really nice variant, because this is forcing them to mix things up by being more close-range melee-centric, but they've done good melee. There is a lot more to the melee in Gundam Versus than you might initially think. So I'm really hoping that this turns out good. They pretty much have me on the hook, because My Hero Academia One's Justice, I love My Hero Academia. I like a lot of the characters. A lot of the characters I've seen are ones that I like. Suya has been confirmed, so I'm pretty much on the hook for this game. I'm just hoping that it lives up to everything it could be, and isn't just, oh, I mash buttons and cool flashy things happen. Because that's the thing with the Naruto Ultimate Ninja Storm games. They're not bad games, they're just bad fighters. They are hit buttons, cool flashy things happen, and if that's what you want, those games deliver. But if you want something you can play like competitively and have a serious fight with friends, they don't deliver. That's where the argument is here. But I'm very excited to try this game out. And I do want to talk about my experience at Anime Central. It was fantastic. Got to meet Kenichi Sonoda. One of the weirdest experiences. I was in the hotel room showing off some of the rare blades to a friend of mine. And I was showing him the character of Newt, who's this, like, military-dressed girl with two gigantic, floating, beefy arms holding a giant sword. And we were like, what a weird character. Who designed this? And we looked it up, and I was like, wait a second. Isn't that guy at the convention? And sure enough, he was. So I went down, saw one of his panels. I was like, cool. Good to see you here. I wish I had the box, because I would have had him autograph my Xenoblade Chronicles 2 case, Except I didn't have it with me. I just had the cartridge, and that is way too tiny for anyone to sign. But that was just such a weird little thing that happened. It was a good convention. Loved it. And their game room was really, really good this year. They spaced it out. There was a lot of breathing room. And so I finally got to play the Rumblefish 2, and okay, fine, I still had some input issues, but it is easily one of Dimps' best fighters. It is much better than Rumblefish 1. I will concede that. I also got to play Fighting Layer on an actual arcade machine, and wow, I actually wish they would just port Fighting Layer to PS4 instead of making Fighting EX Layer, because Fighting Layer is kind of better. A lot of people think it's made by the people who made Street Fighter EX, and a lot of people think Fighting Layer is just Street Fighter EX minus the Street Fighter characters. This is false. Street Fighter EX is a 2.5D fighter for the most part. Fighting Layer is an actual true 3D fighter, but built off of the concepts of the 2.5D fighter. It still plays really, really close to a 2D fighter, but you have 3D movement, and you have some short semi-auto combos, and it's surprisingly crisp and fast. Basically, it plays a lot closer to Rival Schools, but I would actually say it plays better than Rival Schools. It looks surprisingly good for a more than decade-old 3D fighter. Like, the game still holds up really well, and I want this to have a home port. It has never received a home port, and I think that is borderline criminal after finally getting a chance to play it. It's really good 3D fighter. The problem is, like, I could say it might be one of the best 3D fighters. The problem is, due to the fact that it was only released in Japanese arcades, it hasn't been given a good trial by fire. It hasn't had a good chance to be played by a large number of people to give it a stress test and see where and how it breaks, and I think that's disappointing. But most of the weekend was spent playing Gunslinger Stratos because, oh egad, I have wanted to play Gunslinger Stratos for so long. If you're unfamiliar, Gunslinger Stratos, Japanese arcade game, and when it came out, it was huge. Like, a massive chunk of the Japanese fighting game community switched to playing competitive Gunslinger Stratos because it was so cool. Gunslinger Stratos is an arena fighter, right? It's like Gundam Versus, it's like Virtual On, but your controllers are two light guns, but they're light guns with analog sticks on the back. So you use the analog stick on the left controller to move, and the analog stick on the right controller to switch targets. And there's a jump button on the right controller. You hit that to jump, you hold it down to, sort of fly. You can double tap jump to dash. Okay, good. And you attack by pointing the guns at the screen and shooting. And you can aim in two different directions with your two different guns. You're shooting down people, and it feels really, really good. But what makes it better is that there's little magnets on the sides of the gun. And if you take your two guns and you click them together sideways, they transform into a machine gun or some kind of medium weapon. And then if you click them together like one on top of the other, it transforms into a rocket launcher or some kind of heavy weapon. And if you point a gun off-screen and fire it, you do melee attacks. Point both guns off-screen, and you go into melee mode where the camera is more zoomed out, and you run faster and you jump higher, but you don't have any of your guns on you. And it's like, this is so cool, because you're running around and you're jumping around and you're shooting guns in two different directions, chasing down enemies, constantly switching between having your guns off screen for maximum maneuverability, getting in close, punching people up, pulling out your guns to shoot at them after you do a combo, click them together, machine gun, pull them apart, shoot in two directions. It felt so good. I loved it, I loved it, I loved it. Unfortunately, there is absolutely no home port. They tried to do a PC release of the game, doing some kind of keyboard-mouse hybrid thing, and it was called Gunslinger Stratos Infinite. It lasted for 2 months. They shut it down almost immediately before most people had a chance to play, and I believe it because this game really does need two light guns with magnets on the side. It does need those heavily specialized controllers. And I am sorely disappointed that they haven't made those. I'd pay over $100 for those controllers if I could play Gunslinger Stratos at home. I need a home port of this. I need these guns. I'm completely in love with Gunslinger Stratos. And I'm hoping they figure out some kind of a solution. Maybe they can find some way using the Switch controllers to make it work. Maybe if they had enough cardboard. Because the Nintendo Labo is an impressive thing. Which there were Nintendo reps bringing the Labo to the convention. And that was pretty great. And I'm like, yeah, no, if I had a little bit more money to throw around, sure, time and money, because you got to build the thing. The Labo and space to store your cardboard. The Labo is super freaking cool. And it works way better than it has any right to. So you could probably do Gunslinger Stratos Labo. I'm trying to imagine if that was actually how they handled the home release of the game. Gunslinger Labo! I'll take it! Whatever works! Oh, that would be the solution, wouldn't it? Whatever. But, okay, if you can make it out of cardboard, you can make it out of plastic. I would not be opposed to a specialized Gunslinger Stratos plastic thing you shove the Switch controllers into, as long as it worked. I need a home port of Gunslinger Stratos, damn it. The game was amazing. I'm sorry, excuse me. I don't know. I don't know how much of that actually got dumped. Getting a little carried away. I love the game. Confound it. That's that was the first time I've had to use the dump button. I don't think I used it right. Am I even on the air anymore? Am I fired? Darn it. Darn it. I said darn it. Yes. I still need a home port of Gunslinger Stratos, though. This needs to happen. So I'm deeply hoping that that My Hero Academia One's Justice is also very Gunslinger Stratos-like. Until then, I really need to find my save data for Gotcha Force. But, yeah. I believe this is a good time to wrap up the show. So thank you so much for joining me. I hope this has been entertaining for you. I'm glad to be back, and I look forward to getting back to streaming and doing all sorts of wacky nonsense on the GameBabble YouTube channel. So expect something new to go up there. I did do the Princess Maker streams, but I need to figure out why the audio is out of sync and resync the audio and censor one scene before I can put them on YouTube. But they are downloaded to my hard drive, so those should go up eventually. I've played through 1, 2, and 3. Have not started 5 yet, and unfortunately, weirdly, I'm having trouble getting 5 to launch after the recent update. Good job, CFK. But yeah, that's about where we're at. Anyway, yeah. That concludes the show. I hope you tune in next Tuesday from noon to 3 p.m. for more GameBabble Live here on 89.5 FM KCFV The Wave. Until then, here is Black Magic by the Amazons here on 89.5 FM KCFV The Wave. Diverse music for your diverse mind. Thank you so much for listening. See you next week.